Welcome to the Future Hospitality Summit podcast. For more information, visit www.futurehospitalitysummit.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Future Hospitality Summit podcast, the window into hospitality investment into the Middle East. I'm here with Guy Hutchinson, the President and CEO of Rotana Hotel Management. Welcome, Guy.
Well, nice to see you, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Rotana, why don't you give us a broad outline to the organisation to start off with?
Absolutely. I'll be disappointed if everybody is not familiar with Rotana, but just in case.
For that one person out there.
Give you a small feel. Yeah, so Rotana, we're one of the preeminent hospitality or hotel management companies in the Middle East. With a portfolio that extends over the Middle East, Africa, and across into sort of Eastern Europe, Istanbul, Turkey, and Sarajevo. So today, we have a portfolio of 71 trading hotels and a pipeline of 49. So a portfolio of around 120, 125 hotels across 6 brands. So we have a Rotana, which is our 5-star brand, Rayhan, which is a brand of preference, alcohol-free, Arjan, which is our extended stay and hotel apartment brand, Centro, which is our mid-market lifestyle brand, and Edge, which is our collection and latest brand.
So I was going to stop you before you mentioned Edge because I didn't want to give this is the brand new edition. And so tell us a little bit about that one in particular. Give us an overview of it, what makes it special, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So Edge is a collection brand, and it's something that in a way was born out of our experience with COVID-19 over the last 2 years, although we're not necessarily the first to do this. But from our experience of COVID, we came across a lot of hotels that fell into sort of one or two categories. It was either hotels that were under a brand, but were not perhaps getting the attention that they deserved, or independent hotels where ownership were basically struggling to compete in that environment without the support of a brand. And some of these hotels did not necessarily fit neatly into a brand portfolio. So we understood we needed something which was just a little bit more flexible to take hotels which are not very clearly or difficult to convert into a brand. There might be in a heritage building, there might be a villa-only product. So in order to be able to capture these and give them a very sort of flexible, a cost-effective way to convert and to take advantage of the power of a brand and management and everything that we could bring to enhance their performance, that's where we came up with Edge as a concept, and it's been very successful with now 4 or 5 hotels signed and growing quickly.
I was going to ask actually if that you have the pipeline already with that. Tell us a little bit more about the wider pipeline. I was going to directly ask you about Edge there, but you already mentioned that. So tell us a little bit about the Edge, the generic pipeline, especially obviously with the Middle East in mind.
Okay, so and in terms of the generic pipeline, we're seeing actually some very interesting spaces develop for us. We still have signature properties coming up in the UAE. We have a beautiful property coming up in Ras Al Khaimah. But we're also seeing now out towards Qatar, particularly with the World Cup. We've got another 1,000 keys coming nearly in Qatar. Saudi Arabia, which I think has everybody's focus. We have another 7 properties coming in Saudi Arabia, adding to our existing 8, and more and more we're seeing develop, less away from the mega projects, but actually in spaces which in some cases are actually even more interesting for us, like Al Baha in the southeast, where you're opening new destinations, new parts of the country. And then also Egypt. So Egypt is developed as a significant market for us, seeing a lot of development in the Egyptian space. We have a hotel coming on the north coast, which is now just a premium destination. We have a beautiful property coming in Luxor. We have 2 in Cairo, which are coming. So Egypt also is developing quite quickly.
And you mentioned Qatar there as well. Give us the overview of what the World Cup will actually have as an impact for hotels on on Qatar as a destination?
Yeah, it's going to be phenomenal. We're already seeing super strong bookings into Qatar. This is a very unique World Cup because it's the first time it's ever been held in one city. If you look at before, it's always been in multiple cities in a country and sometimes over two countries. And the World Cup is delivering, probably about 40% of what you'd normally see in an annual budget is being delivered over the 6 weeks of the World Cup in our program.
Now, I remember the last podcast we did with you, you mentioned that, well, we talked about how you bounce back so quickly from COVID. And in fact, in some ways, although there was a big impact, it was overcome very quickly. I suppose my question to that, does the strength of the market now actually throw up any new challenges or perhaps opportunities with those expansion plans for you?
Yes. I think really it's more. We had actually one of the best decisions we made through COVID was to hold on to our human capital. So at sort of a hotel level, it has been less of an issue. Where we've perhaps had a little bit of challenges is from a central perspective, is that we're now having to resource and ramp up our centralized teams, our corporate teams, quicker than we expected to. So, from a human resource perspective, projects perspective, design, architecture, development, finance, so our regional teams, we're now investing much more strongly in our regional teams and growing that infrastructure quicker than we expected.
And how much of an emphasis on this growth is the food and beverage part of the offering that Rotana offers?
Extremely important. But we've always kept a very strong team in that space to get not only into how we operate hotels, but we put a lot of time and work into research and development as well, basically to identify food trends and then see how we incorporate those into our hotels going forward.
The last time we spoke to you as well was just prior to, so it would have been around March time, April time, just before the Saudi program that we put together. Was there anything that came out from that event, in particular, I guess, focused on the Saudi market, that actually surprised you?
I think, it was it was a great event. It was the first one that we had attended in Saudi, and honestly, we were really delighted. The level of attendance in particular. There were people that were not necessarily on the guest list, the invitation list, but some very high profile investors appeared in the coffee break. So formally and informally, we accessed an amazing network at that event, and it by far surpassed our expectations.
So then we need to get these guys to just put their hands up nice and early, so you know that they're there. That's the main thing.
Yeah, but we walked into very substantial investors and owners, literally in the coffee break, and was and had some amazing networking opportunities with them, but unexpected.
That's great to hear. As we're approaching the end of this year, we're obviously talking about inflation. What's your view on this? What's your outlook? And does this actually impact things for you going forward over the next 12 months?
It's a great question, and it's very hard to have a detailed picture on what this is going to look like. I think there are, we've been sort of having those conversations around supply chain and costs before this conversation around inflation and fuel cost, and before this even started, issues with China and cost of transportation and manufacturing. So we've been pushing back on a lot of this for about 12 to 15 months and been quite successful with it in the region. So I think from a supply chain perspective, I'm not sure that the full impact of fuel cost increases are reflected, because there's a certain amount of hedging on fuel price which happens. Yeah. So how far into the future or how much that is covering existing travel, we're not sure. And if this will have, maybe they're insulated slightly against fuel cost increases and we haven't maybe seen the full impact of that, and pricing in airline travel is already quite high. So that is probably the most important indicator that we would look to, because it has a big impact on us as an industry, how airlines fare and how their operations are affected by increases. So when we look into next year, we're still looking very much at growth. We're still looking at trading growth. We still have a very optimistic outlook. We think, the region has led globally, has led performance numbers, any numbers you look at for the hospitality for about 8 to 9 months anyway. Summer, the European capitals have got definitely a peak because there's been pent-up travel. So we're seeing very high numbers in the traditional European capitals like Paris and London and Rome doing great numbers. But over the long term, and I think into next year, the region will still stay very strong. So even with inflationary increase, even with supply chain challenges, let's see what happens with airline and fuel costs and how that will work. Yeah. But we're still optimistic in our outlook.
So keep one eye on it.
Yeah.
Finally, we're looking into the event to Dubai in September. You're on a CEO's panel where you'll be quizzed by Wolfgang Newman, by the chairman of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. So my thinking, obviously, that particular session is going to be very focused on sustainability.
Yeah.
So what are your commitments and how do you shape your plans going forward as an organisation, and what is Rotana committing to with regards to sustainable development?
Honestly, I think we tend to keep a slightly lower profile around sustainability, and it's because we see a lot of greenwashing. There's a lot of PR statements made around sustainability initiatives and target setting and net zero, but sometimes I question, whoever goes back and measures, 5 years after the press release, what exactly has been implemented,
Sure.
So we tend to be in the school a little bit. We talk less, we do, So things like single-use plastics. I know a number of organizations who 5 years ago announced a program or a target to remove single-use plastics, but 4 to 5 years later haven't removed a single-use plastic. We announced this, and in 4 months we had completed it in every hotel where we operate. So, for us, sustainability is more about restructuring the company from the inside to culturally, infrastructurally, institutionally adopt and operate along sustainable practice. And in that space, it's a part of our everyday conversation. It needs to and does become part of how we do business. So when we're looking at new build of hotels, taking design and architecture standards, and ensuring that buildings are under our brand are built in the right way for the future. Having planning to be able to retrofit existing buildings, because this is particularly when you come to energy and energy management and water, which I think is going to become a massive conversation in the future in terms of how you're handling water and how you're handling food waste. Then, operational initiatives like removing single-use plastics. Everything is gone from our hotels. Bringing in sustainable produce. We were one of the first, although others made announcements on promotions, but bringing in sustainable produce, bringing in the UAE. If you go into one of our hotels in the UAE, if you eat a piece of salmon, it's locally farmed.
It's all. I do agree with that. I think the whole sort of setting yourself up in the crosshairs of commitment is probably the worst place to be if you're not going to fulfill. And I think it's much better to be sort of working on these things and then announcing when you've got it right.
And it's not so much that we're concerned about a public commitment to it. It's just more, I don't want to be pulled into a space where we understand what is PR and what is action, So when we talk to these things, we want to be able to talk from delivery. We want to talk about execution. We want to talk from a space where when we say something, it's done. And if you come into our properties, and guests experience this all the time, and the guest is really the ultimate barometer or the measurement for us of if we're doing the right thing. And we want them to physically see what we're doing, and it's more than just put the sign on in the bathroom if you want your towel. It comes down to human resource practice. What are you doing around recruitment, hiring? How are you auditing your supply chain in terms of product or factory or manufacturing? What do you know about your supply chain and how what you're buying is, either made, built, grown, and understanding that supply chain and making sure across the board it's sustainability. And our focus is just to continuously rebalance and reorganize the company, that we don't just talk about it, but we actually physically change.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks so much for giving us your insights. Really look forward to meeting you in Dubai in a few weeks now. And thank you again for your support.
That's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Future Hospitality Summit podcast. For more information, visit www.futurehospitalitysummit.com.